All right, everybody, welcome to the first premiere episode of the Game Development Livestream. This is like being present when molecules first became life on Earth. Like, it is that primeval. Like, you get to actually shape the content and what is going to happen here in the future. I'm with my good friend Paul. We're going to just start to introduce ourselves, tell you a little bit about what we want to talk for this time, talk about the vision for future episodes of this. But I also want to say, if you're watching this in live already, and I see there's already 11 people live, so there's people just bouncing on here within seconds. Amazing. If you want to be part of the conversation, we actually have the technology to add you to the stage. So don't feel like you have to just listen to me and Paul talk to each other or talk at you. You can become part of the conversation. But let's start with an intro. I'll go second since I've just been talking. But Paul.
Hey everybody, I'm Paul. I've been building games for, decades now, it seems like, because that's probably how long it's been. I'm currently working at a place called King. You may have heard of the game we make, Candy Crush. But I go back, I've worked at numerous publishers, big and small, like Electronic Arts and Zynga. I've worked on small projects, huge projects, and on everything from AAA to free-to-play mobile. So passionate game developer, passionate game designer, and really excited to be engaging in this kind of conversation.
Thanks, Paul. My name again, John Radoff, and I am CEO of a company called Beamable. We're a development platform for the back end of games. Before that, my street cred in games comes from the games I built at Disruptor Beam. We built built around some of the biggest entertainment franchises that exist: Star Trek, Walking Dead, Game of Thrones. That was super fun. Shipped games to 20 million players. 20 million seems big to me. Small in Paul's world of major releases, but that's going to allow us to bring a few different perspectives, sort of successful indie game launches all the way to AAA. That's what we want to talk about, and we want to target a game developer audience. There's a lot of content, live streams out there that you can join any hour of the day and hear game players, streamers talking about games. Of course, we're going to talk about our favorite games that we want to play because that's part of being a game developer. But I think when we do that, we're going to peel it back a little bit. We're going to talk about what makes them great games, maybe what they were thinking about in the design process, as well as new trends, new technologies, focused on the industry audience. So we really want to invite game developers to be part of this, people who are in the industry. That said, if you are just game industry curious, maybe you want to have a career in it, maybe you just want to feel like you're part of the inside baseball learning about all this stuff, you are 100% welcome to join in, listen, gain some cheat codes about the industry from that experience, and learn whatever you want, and even be part of the conversation as well. So that's kind of my thoughts on this. Paul, what do you think? Does that sound right for our audience here?
Sounds bang on. I do have to start off things with my usual hashtag disclaimer that the lawyers make me say. Everything I'm going to say here today is my own viewpoint and my own speech. I don't speak for my employer, and I can't answer.
Thank God. All right.
Yeah, I don't speak for my employer, and I can't share any secret inside information or list any numbers for my current employer. So don't expect those kind of secret reveals. But the rest of it, my vision, my passion is exactly what John's talking about. Really excited to engage with other developers and other. I love that phrase, game curious. Like let's get people that really are interested in not just the surface level, but what's really happening in game development, because it's really dynamic place. There's so many changes. It's shy. I feel like I've been through three great ages of Middle Earth just in the last few years. So yeah, really excited to begin this journey.
That's interesting, Paul. So is it literally 3 I almost want to drill into that right away. What are the 3 ages?
Oh, the 3 ages are. Paul's little module is pre-connected. So we were playing games, and everything was basically a standalone. Maybe you brought some friends, maybe you had a LAN party or something like that, but games were basically bespoke standalone toys, right? And then we got connected, right? Then everything became a multiplayer game, and multiplayer games became the thing. And then it went mobile, and then games are omnipresent. We have these sort of always on. Back in the old days, you and I had a couple conversations, and we used the phrase pervasive gaming, right? Like the game could reach out at you at any time, 24 hours a day, and you'd be part of the game, and they would come at you in bite-sized chunks. And always on is a phrase that some people use. So that's, to me, in Paul's little schema for instant schema, just add water. That's how I'm thinking about it.
Awesome. Now, I just want to kind of reiterate one of the things we're hoping to accomplish with the show. And by the way, again, you're here as a first-time viewer for sure. This is the first time we're doing it. We want this to be a platform where you get to participate as well. So we're probably going to get better at this over time. We need to kind of add a producer-ish type person. I'll say we have a job opening for that. You get paid the exact same that Paul and I are. So if you want to do it for all the fame and fortune that you're going to gain, well, the fortune kind of follows not from us directly, but by the fame that you're going to establish in the industry. But if you're that person who wants to sort of help us out, be part of it weekly, like we'd love to talk to you and see how you can help, because there's a million things that happen while you're doing this, posting content, links, helping to facilitate bringing guests on and off, and add your own comments. Like that doesn't mean you don't get to talk. Like that means you get to be part of it. So would love to add someone who wants to play that role every week. Talk to me. But for right now, if you want to come on, I'm doing my best to pay attention to all the platforms we're on: YouTube, X, LinkedIn, Facebook. We're multicasting to all of these different audiences. If you want to come in and ask a question, talk about a game development topic, talk about a design topic, this is your place. I'll shoot you a little link to StreamYard and you get to come right up on stage. You just need a camera because it's a video format here. So let's to just kick things off though, Paul, let's talk about the timely January 2025 topic. What are the big trends in game development that I don't necessarily want to try to identify the list of everything, but what are the ones you're paying attention to this year? Because you're right in the thick of things, working at, I think it's technically the biggest publisher in the world for games. So
probably now, yeah. I mean, I haven't actually tried to slice that, but it's a credible claim. I don't know if it
one of the biggest in the world. That's
a no-brainer. I'll just say one of the biggest, but yeah.
What are the trends you're paying attention to? Again, we're not talking about anything, totally proprietary or anything, but what you're seeing from that level of publisher.
Yeah, well, I mean, I am heads down in my little corner of that massive world, right? So there are a lot of trends that I don't pretend to have the all-seeing eye, but I think there are some big trends that are affecting really all game development, big or small, right? And certainly big because you got more surface area to affect. And I think the one is, of course, the industry is a little bit under siege at the moment, right? We've had a rough year. Growth is lower in a lot of sectors, right? And we've had some unpleasant job adjustments, across the industry. And 24 was a rough year for a lot of people, and I don't know if things are leveled off or not, but it was a tough year to be a game developer for sure. And then I guess the other thing is that AI, love it or hate it, or fall somewhere in between. You can't ignore the impact it's having on literally all of our, many aspects of our lives, not the least of games. But I think games is a particularly exciting place to be. I'm going to use exciting because I guess I try to be moderate on the, good or bad. I don't think it's a binary state, right? It's not just, it's good and bad. It's the real answer, right? But as game builders, John, we've chased AI as a component of making our games fun for as long as there have been video games. The very first video game you ever played had AI in it, right? So this isn't a new thing for us, but it's certainly a new level of enablement, right? That is radically changing how we build games.
Yeah, well, we've always talked about AI as the opponent or the various, sure, in arcade games we played in the 70s, there was AI, if we want to call the ghosts in Pac-Man a kind of
I
an
do.
AI. Yeah, sure. I mean,
Yeah.
but AI has taken on a little bit of a different meaning in today's world. It's about training these big neural networks and applying it to a range of problems. So, yeah, the AI as it's been defined in games has sort of meant one thing. I think for mass culture, computer science, et cetera, it's kind of had a different meaning, particularly from a couple of years ago. I think the breakthrough moment was ChatGPT, right? That's when suddenly everybody logged into ChatGPT and they could see, really for the first time, interacting with a computer in a conversational way where mostly it didn't screw up. Yes, we know it has weird hallucinations and stuff. Like, you don't have to remind me. I know the things that it's not always
can't
great
do
at.
Science.
Yeah, guess what? It's getting a lot better at that too. But sure, there's things that it isn't perfect at, but it's pretty damn good. And people saw that starting a couple of years ago with ChatGPT, and then parallel to that, things like these diffusion models, which people have now become familiar with, also from within ChatGPT, but Midjourney and Stable Diffusion, all these other applications, which have been getting used. So that's sort of like the new era of AI. Paul, when you think about using AI in games, is what are you talking about? Are you talking about the next gen of NPCs or that stuff?
I think I'm really talking. I hate the fact that it's always three things, but in this case, it really is three things. Because I've given a number of talks on this, and I've spent a lot of time really working through it. And you're right. The NPCs, the AI opponents, is a very different domain. So let's say that that's one thing, like putting active agents in the game so that the game can come alive or be richer or deeper or more, better, faster, whatever it is. But the thing that's I think really changing is the production side, right? Like how do I get more art into the game faster? How do I write code faster, better, faster? How do I, it's literally it's an amplification of skill, or the addition of skill where skill didn't exist before, to numerous different development skills that go into assembling a game, right? So presumably we'll be able to make bigger games with smaller teams, or bigger games faster, or better games, all the things, right? And then I guess the third domain is that, like, I've been doing this for a while, and if one thing is certain, whenever we get a new technology effector, like we got phones, right? We got new classes of games, right? We get new classes of entertainment whenever we sort of change the rules like this, right? And so there's a whole new continent, of games that we don't even know what they look like yet. We haven't even explored that, right? It's a vast uncharted territory of new game forms, right? And so, the better players, make more software, and holy shit, new game types, right? So that's my and two of those things are the things I've been craving my entire career, my entire life, right? like the better tools thing is exciting, and it's actually a big focus in my day to day. But it's not a thing that wakes me up out of bed like, oh man, I can make art faster. Like yeah, that's empowering, but like I think when I start going AI when I'm an AI maximalist, it's really on the the new games I'm going to get to play, because I'm first and foremost a gamer, right? And that's that. Oh man, that gets me up in the morning. So exciting.
So you went with three categories. I'm going to go with two. It's just sort of, there's this category of, I guess you could call it faster horses, to go back to Henry Ford. And that's just do more of the same, just faster.
Yeah.
But then there's all the new stuff, the new types of products.
Right.
I think both are really great. If for a lot of indie developers out there, for example, or individual solo developers, faster horses is what you actually need a lot of the time, because you're very super small teams. Maybe you're taking creative risks that are not being taken elsewhere in the industry, and you want to get to the point of execution a lot more rapidly. And that's great for those teams. So I celebrate that. But the most fascinating part to think about is, what are the new types of products that it's going to open up? So interestingly enough, it was about a year ago, me and Ali, he's the CTO of Beamable, we went and won this hackathon that A16Z was putting on. and we were just supposed to use AI in it. And we were able to create kind of a pretty cool Dungeons and Dragons-ish game in a day and a half with Unity front end, with graphics, with scenes. And no, it was not a commercially shippable game. It wasn't even really playable outside of the hackathon, but it really showed how fast you could get. But it wasn't just the speed, it was that this was going to be a new type of game. What was interesting about it was you're playing with multiple people. And this for me is one of the interesting aspects of AI, which no one has really done much with it yet, which is this idea of what I could just call multiplayer prompting. So people have now been playing heavily with things like ChatGPT for a couple of years in what I'll call the single player mode. So you're in ChatGPT, you do all kinds of useful things, including D&D type adventures and all kinds of weird, crazy virtual world stuff. Like we've been doing that now for a couple of years, but as a single player. What's really interesting is when you then think about the computer being the dungeon master with multiple players, and now the emergent creativity that comes out of that is not only from the synthesis that the AI performs as sort of that prompt processor, but really it's the players riffing off of each other, which I think is interesting. And there's got to be a trillion game ideas. Trillion is probably a much too small number. There's some huge number of game ideas out there that are just going to come from the multiplayer aspect of bringing people together with an AI kind of in the mix at the center of that experience, which I think is interesting to explore.
Totally agree. And like the D&D thing really resonates with me. I've been using D&D as my home use case, and I probably run one of the most high-tech D&D games on the planet, because I've constantly been using my weekly D&D game to sharpen my my AI skills separate from my day job. So and we can get into some of it. I hope we'll explore some of that, because some of that is that's all public domain coolness that I could share some, like you said, AI at the center, but also AI at the edge. I think my hotness project right now is to actually, I'm the dungeon master still, but building active AI player agents to intermix with the human players to add narrative structure to the game. Like, literally, players that the players engage with, but that I can secretly pull puppet strings on. So rich peer players in the experience that help, like actors in a location-based entertainment thing. So I'm playing with that, and it's super cool.
I want to give away a free idea on the multiplayer that I was talking about. It's for anybody watching or listening. We're up to 33 people live in the audience, by the way. So I'm just going to keep repeating this as the audience grows. This is not going to just be me and Paul in the future. It's going to be you as well. So if you're interested in joining the StreamYard, you can, if you've got a camera, you can jump in, post in either Facebook or LinkedIn, one of the places that we're streaming to live right now, and just say what you want to talk about. And I can send you privately a link that you can follow and jump on stage with us, and you can expand the conversation. So multiplayer stuff. So there's like a couple of levels to multiplayer. There's multiplayer when it's like 3 or 4 people. That's like the D&D game, the Call of Duty game, most formats of Call of Duty. Then there's the level beyond that, which is MMO. Right? So you've got big persistent worlds. I think that's a super interesting place to involve AI. And I'm going to go back to the game that Ali and I worked on a year ago that won that hackathon. The idea which we wanted to move towards, and I'm just putting this out there for free because we're not going to have time to work on this. I'm running a company that's building infrastructure to enable this. But the idea with an MMO is that through the player interactions, where they're getting into this multiplayer prompting aspect with the AI in the back end, kind of synthesizing it together, you can go to the next level of that, which is the stories and the locations that are just generated through that experience. You can throw that in a database, make it a persistent aspect, And then other players who come along later can revisit some of those same locations or even extend some of those storylines. So the emergent creativity of this is, go with it, Paul.
I feel like I'm super enthusiastic. I love what you're doing there, John. Like, yeah, you can immediately see how my experience, you don't just have the same experience I had. You have an experience that builds on top of the experience I have. Each playing of the game enriches the game, right? Am I getting what you're selling?
Exactly, but also just the ability to have random encounters again. So in a 3 or 4 person game, you're kind of together through the whole experience. We won't talk about DMs trying to handle like players that want to go off and have a separate location. I don't allow that. Like, guys, keep it together. We're gonna have some house rules here.
Telling a story.
You're not going off to a separate place. Like, we're staying together. But a computer doesn't have that limitation, so people can kind of have that MMO experience of you can have a set of locations that exist in the world and a prompting space, a storyline tagged to those locations, and people can kind of bring themselves into those experiences in the location. Now, when you've got a big MMO world with a lot of concurrency, what it means is suddenly people can come in and out of those spaces. So think of like, hopefully people who are watching right now have been exposed to like old style MUDs and stuff, text adventures. Hey, World of Warcraft is graphics thrown on top of a MUD, basically, or a chat room experience. So you've all seen versions of this. You can go into sort of the text spaces that exist in that world, but now add persistence to the storylines and whatnot that can be generated in those different locations. So other people who weren't even present at the time can revisit those locations and use technologies from vector databases and things like that to get this concept of like similar enough in what players are talking about that they're brought back to a particular location and get to revisit a storyline. I think that's a really interesting way to nurture emergent gameplay, to get people feeling like they are influencing a world. Like most MMOs, you don't really influence the world too much. You exist in it, you have your guild, you have your social context, but you're not changing the world. So this is something that could be really, really interesting to feel like you're an active living participant in something that endures over time. And I really just want to see people run with this idea. I think this could be a 1-person, 2-person team that does something super innovative and gets to 100 million people playing something cool. So please steal that idea. It's free. I'd love to see really cool applications of AI.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think what you just said there at the end also points to a trend I think we're going to see as these tools get richer and richer. We're going to see many, many, many more smaller teams taking agile bets, right? Because if one thing these tools do is they let smaller teams, build rapidly very interesting experiences. You kind of had a minimum stake required to build a game that people would recognize, and that seems like it's been going down for AI. It's not just purely an AI thing. The tools get better all the time, but I think this is a big inflection point.
Is it in some ways the next generation of UGC as well? Because
it totally is. Like every game is a UGC. I said not too long ago, even as late as last year, I was telling my son, because he's a teenager and he's like wanting to try something, and I was like, I don't, should I make a game? And I'm like, you know what I would do if I were you? I'd be making Roblox content, not because Roblox, but because Roblox handles the a defined toolkit in a small space, handles the discovery problem. It's just one person or a small team can make Roblox content, whereas there's a certain amount of minimum threshold of coding required to make an independent game. Is it just me, or are we starting to get questions? Is this a thing now? All right, it feels like we're alive.
We have that technology. No, we're getting comments. We're aggregate. So awesome. Everyone who's watching, by the way, you can be like Martin, who we're seeing his comment here. You can post in LinkedIn and Facebook. I know that at least on those, probably YouTube as well, we're seeing comments. I'm not sure about X, haven't seen one yet, but it might be there. But definitely post comments. And if you want to be part of the live conversation, it doesn't just have to be through text. You are welcome to jump in here, be part of the conversation live. We want to make this a dynamic forum every week where industry folks get to come talk what you're excited about or ask questions.
But Mark, YouTube, so it's not just
Yep, we got a woohoo from Lucas. Thank you, Lucas, for proving that YouTube's working. Martin's talking about going back to what we were talking about in MMO games and this idea that the community has an impact in the course of development. That's actually an interesting point, because I was talking about the course of just the world and how you shape storylines in the context of it. You're talking, Martin, I think, the idea that the actual development of the game even gets impacted by the community that plays in there. Adds a lot of interesting things. I mean, for years we've talked about the idea that communities inside games own more and more of, I guess, the gameplay roadmap. And of course, the typical game developer answer to that is sure, but like the developers are thinking about it very holistically and the long-term health of the game, and maybe players don't always think about sort of the thing they think is fun and how that impacts the entire world experience. But AI does open up more possibility space there, more agency. What do you think of that, Paul?
Oh, I think it's definitely a thing, because if you have if you have an LL, in the same way that we've thought of the thing holistically as game designers, we could build structure into the way an AI sort of acts as guardrails, right? Sort of like a dynamic wizard that like would apply some of that holistic thinking and sort of allow players to make things that don't suck, basically, and more or less as they build them. So yeah, Martin is building his cool new thing for the game, and the AI would be able to sort of evaluate it as he's doing it. Say, yeah, Martin, that's great, except it ought to cost twice as much so that it doesn't break the economy. But like it would guide him to get his desired experience, but help it fit into the game. I think that's a real possibility for sure.
It's interesting because the game developers could assemble together essentially the Bible for the game that explains in a narrative format to the large language model some of the key concepts that are important to structuring the game, and that could be amended over time, and even have things like economic variables and things known to it. And that could be used to actually inform game design proposals. I mean, there's infinity of ways to apply an LLM, but that's an interesting one right there.
Absolutely. There's a comment here before Martin that is up here about, will we hired to fix prompt engineers, quick and dirty projects made with AI? Yeah, that one. The answer is absolutely yes. I think maybe it's a little cynical sounding, but that's what we already do. So the prompt engineer is called an executive, and or a marketing report, and we get told, make a game that works like this. I get prompts as terse as any chat GPT prompt, and get asked to make a game experience or a change to a game experience based on prompting. So I kind of feel like I do this already and have been doing for decades.
There's another application of AI here that I'm pretty excited though about, which is the ability to implement game systems through rapid prototyping, where the AI actually interprets things like game rules and stuff, not just for generating code, but actually implementing game systems. It's an approach that Ali and I called semantic programming when we created this hackathon about a year ago. In a moment, I'll post a link to that so you can take a look at it. And there's some really interesting things to think about here. So I'll give specific examples. Like in our game, which was intended to be like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of dungeon master experience for multiple players playing in a world, we didn't want to teach the LLM all of the different game rules, but we did want to have certain concepts that would be present within the storyline. Like we had this basic concept that after rolling up your character, every player entering the game kind of has a nemesis, and the idea of the plot was to sort of channel you towards your nemesis character and confront them. This is just sort of like the conceit of the game experience. So we were able to bake that into the LLM and then implement various parts of the game system, like combat, for example, like anything else that could happen in that game experience, by saying, here's how we want combat to work. So the idea here, though, is you could use an LLM not only to generate the code that you add to the code base of your game, but you could actually use it to interpret rules dynamically. Now, that is a terrible way to ship a game at production scale, because you can't have an LLM. You can't have an LLM running through a rule system for millions of players concurrently. Like, you'll need too many GPUs to do that. Maybe, well, it's a whole other topic of like GPUs running the LLM on your own device, and that opens up some other use cases. But in general, it's not like the way to ship production code. There's unpredictability and stuff for it. But the idea is you could get to prototyping so fast with this mechanism, even in real time, even while the game is running. Like, you don't even have to like relaunch the game client, and you're trying out whole new game systems that are implemented on the back end. Now, you still are going to need the coders who come along and implement that, and maybe AI will get better and better at coding over time and translating the prototype into functional code. But sure, like, I think engineers are going to be able to play a very important role in making shippable production code and making sure everything works and it's consistent, and wrapping it in API mechanisms that everybody likes and uses. Like, there's a million things that are going to happen well before the singularity, when the singularity does everything for us, I guess. But
that feels so far away, man. I feel like since this journey has started, I've written more code than I've written in the 10 years before. Like, I feel like I wrote more code in 2024 than I don't know how many years before that. It's my code output is going up, not down.
That's one of the laws of the universe, right?
Yeah. It's like when they told us, if we used calculator. I mean, I'm old enough where they told us if we used calculators, we wouldn't be able to do math, right? Now I do more math than ever, right? I don't know.
Right. So the phenomena, if you think of like code production basically being, in a sense, an industrial process, like, the less expensive it gets to generate code, the more code we need, the more engineers we need. Like, this is the way virtually every technology grows. Totally.
We're writing different code, so maybe it doesn't conform to what people thought they were going to be writing, but we're definitely writing a crap ton of code. What is Elizabeth saying here? Yes. I also love it.
There were 18,000 games shipped on Steam last year, Paul. Do we need 18,001 or 20,000 this year? That's 3,000 more than was on Steam the year before. So despite a lot of disruption in the industry and studios losing folks, like, more games than ever were shipped. So what do you think's going on? Do we need more games? Do we need different kind of games? Like,
I don't know. It's not even about how many have shipped. It's really what are purchases, because as production capabilities go, as people can make games faster, better, cheaper, that number is going to continue to skyrocket, right? Like, maybe it has an artificial pressure on it because Steam has some vested interest in curation. So the number on Steam is not necessarily the number of games people are putting out there, but it's a good indicator. I think it's a good number, and I think that number, assuming Steam lets it, is going to dramatically continue to spin up. But we'll just hit the limits of discovery. I mean, you remember the first couple of years of the App Store, right? And then how many apps get released in the App Store now? You couldn't in 1,000 lifetimes play all the games. So it's really not so much about the games that exist, the total weight of the games that exist. It's the weight of games that reach your eyes and attract you, right? And I don't think that is elastic as the number of games that get produced, right? And I think if game costs to develop go down dramatically, the economy can afford to absorb many more games, right? We can afford to build many more games. So I think the numbers are going to go up. You're going to get flooded, right? And it's going to do what happens in a lot of these cases. It's going to squeeze out the middle, right? The people with massive brands will be able to attract people, and people at the low/small end will be able to make games quicker. It'll be hard to be a 30 or 60 person dev team in a world where there's so many games, though. I think.
Ilya, thank you for mentioning Jevons paradox. That's exactly what I was remembering. I just couldn't remember the technical term for it. But yes, we've seen this in other industries, like energy usage, for example, I think is the classic example, or at least the current example. I'm just posting You'll have to excuse me for doing it off my X profile. Did I mention we need a producer who will get paid as much as Paul and I are on this podcast? And you can help us do things like pull in videos and content and make sure that we keep it dynamic and lively. Pull in guests. We want live people to participate in this. And that can start today, by the way. If you're someone who wants to join the stage with me and Paul, you have something to say, by all means, like, let me know in a message in the comments here, and I will DM you a link to StreamYard, and you can jump on stage with your camera. But I'm just showing a link here of it's pinned to the highlights of my X profile. I've got info on that little hackathon we won about a year ago, where we combined an LLM, in this case Claude, with a couple of different generative graphics generators, and created a multiplayer D&D-like experience. And it was very cool that we were able to do it in a day and a half, partly because the AI technology is there. We used the beamable tech to just make it be a server-based game very readily. So you can get fast with things. And the point I was making is the semantic programming concept we had is that once you've got an LLM that's inherent to the back end, you can use that LLM for a lot of things that are not necessarily just like running your NPC character or updating a storyline. You can actually wrap LLM-based logic in game rules. Like, you could write a little API that says, here's my spell casting API I use elsewhere in the game client, except the interpretation of the rules is going to be via LLM, and it's going to generate some XML data back telling us, I don't know, how much hit points of damage it did to a player and whatnot. And again, not shippable code, but super fast prototyping of ideas. And I think people could start to very creatively incorporate AI into their development process, even if you don't ship with AI. Could make you much more creative and able to test out ideas more quickly.
You know, I remember when you did this, and I shared it with so many people. It's such a great beacon of what a team can do. But I will say that it's only your second most impressive post on this topic. The post that you made that has informed so much of my thinking, and I've used to such great effect, was earlier. I think it was on your Medium account or whatever, where you posted the. This was earlier in the LLM cycle, but your little instant text adventure game prompt. You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I do remember it.
So I still use it to this day, but I've gotten and I really would like to share some of the ways I've used it. I've expanded its use case quite a bit by applying it to abstract data and abstract experiences. And so an easy way to blow people's mind a few months ago is probably we've moved on, like the bar keeps going up, but like would be to give the LLM like your like a financial spreadsheet, and then use your prompt to turn it into a role-playing game, and like literally virtual space navigate through abstract data sets or through your company's business plan, or turn abstract, boring business documents into role-playing games. I've had so much fun and effect with that. It's been amazing.
I'll share really quick the article you're referring to. So
awesome.
I have a copy of it on my Substack too, but it's not SEO'd as well on Substack because it's been here for a while. But this is going back more than a couple of years now.
Yeah. So, this is like right at the dawn of things. Yeah.
Yeah, and cool. And I have the prompt. Everything's in there. You could reproduce it yourself. If anything, it's better now, and you could even use that same prompt, I think, within some of the device-based LLMs. So if you wanted to just mess around with it, like using Llama on your own device, it'll mostly work fine. It'll probably be equivalent to what happened a couple of years ago in ChatGPT at the time. But there's a lot you can do there in just terms of dynamic gameplay, things like that. I thought I was hoping, Paul, what you were referring to was this other article I wrote that got some widespread circulation at the time, where I stole, and you're from the automotive industry, so I was hoping that you would appreciate it, actually. But I know I'm going way back there. But there's this idea from car autonomy of the 5 levels where like
Absolutely. Yep.
level 2 is like it kind of keeps its lane and stuff like that, and you have to pay attention 100% of the time. To level 5, the car just drives itself. You get rid of the steering wheel, and our cars become mobile pleasure palaces and offices, I guess. So that's the future. But I tried to take that same 5 levels of thinking
I remember that post now,
autonomy and applying it to the world of game development, where there's sort of different groups too. There's the player, how it affects it for you. There's the game studio. There's the whole universe of UGC and adding content that way. There's different ways to think about this stuff. And I think we're still pretty much at, I don't know, level 2 or 3 for most of our uses of AI still, but there's a lot of really interesting ones out there. What do you think? I don't know, Paul, where are we in 2025 in this stuff? Like what if people are thinking, oh, I want to use AI to actually do something in a game studio today that will produce results? Where are we, like, just pragmatically now? And then where do you think we'll be in a few years?
Well, I think today, and Oscar just asked if this thing works. The answer is yes, Oscar, it does work. So I think there's a few things that you could do today. Like if I was starting up, like one, you can use it to make your code better. You know, I don't think it replaces or really does too much for your 10x programmer, your elite programmer. But I think it would take a more junior programmer and make them much more effective, or maybe a rusty programmer. So I fall into this category, and a couple of my other design friends do too, where we have coding skills, but since we're not a day-to-day professional engineer, right? You know, we're qualified coders, but we're not, you know, there's a big performance improvement when you do something every day, right? And so AI is it's like a powerful exoskeleton, like put on an Iron Man suit, you know, and lets me haul ass and write code that it would have taken me I could write in an hour what it would have taken me half a day to write, you know. And you can do the same thing for other specialized area of games, like you can write what would otherwise be a mediocre pitch and turn it into a proper pitch. You could write a mediocre design document and turn it into a well-structured design document. I think the AI is really limited, though. It can never take a good thing and make it excellent. Like the upper echelons of where you want to be are absolutely requiring the human touch. But it gets things to good very fast, and then you can apply your energy as a creative to drag things. So I'm spending a lot less time building the crappy version of things and pulling things from good to great, right? Which feels like it's a really rewarding place to spend your creative energy. So that's what I would be doing. I would be having it do all these things. But I think the biggest proven thing today is exactly the coding thing. Like, you know, you don't just have to, oh no, I can't make my game because I don't have a 10x programmer. Well, you know, a mediocre programmer like me is probably good enough at this point.
And haven't pitch decks gotten a lot better in the last couple of years?
For sure.
I mean, it's the same thing you said, which is getting to something truly great or amazing in a pitch is still something an AI is not going to do for you. But if you want a good looking pitch deck, like almost every pitch deck looks good now, which is kind of funny. Like, and if it doesn't, like, scratch your head and wonder why. But you can, I mean, even just using what's built into something like PowerPoint and clicking the designer button and having it do the generative AI that, in that case, Microsoft does in the background for you, like, even that is really good. And you combine that with some of the, like, Stable Diffusion type image generators, like generate an image, throw it into the design button in PowerPoint, and suddenly you have a pretty slick looking deck that you would not have had 3 years ago. So,
and it really gives you a chance to, I mean, there's really no excuse for missing things. Like today, like if you miss like a critical component of a pitch deck or a design document, it's kind of like not bothering to run spell check, right? Like you can literally use the AI to make sure that your document is structurally sound, not missing critical components. You're not going to get, oops, I forgot to put, you know, or I forgot to close my metaphor, or I forgot to do the obvious thing. Again, not creative stuff as much as mechanical stuff. But it'll, it's just the next level of spell check at that level. It saved my ass a number of times.
Oscar's applying for
Yeah.
the highly paid in fame and that terrible word people use, exposure. But
Well,
I'll promise you, you're being paid the same as Paul and I are paid for this. So,
what about give back,
and
John? What about give back? Like this industry has been, it's a great place to be. I think I'm here because I wanna do something fun and to give back to the people, not because like you say, we're not getting paid anything for this, but yeah, let's do something cool, right?
that's the purpose of this. Is
Yeah.
we've been in this industry for a while, and once in a while, I won't speak for Paul. Once in a while, I know something that people find useful, so I'm happy to share that. And if you want to use it, that's great.
If you can earn 2x, sure, sold.
Yeah, sometimes I have a terrible idea, and that's a great topic for conversation because you can critique it and we can expose why you might not want to do it, or you can be the person who's like, I don't care about any of those counter reasons. I'm going to try it anyway. By the way, some of the great games have been made because literally everybody said don't do it, and then one person just stuck with it, did it, and it turned out great. Oscar, if Oscar's saying he'll do it if he earns 2x what we are, absolutely. Like
So
we'll sign up for that. In fact, if you want to jump in live now, like join us for the conversation because we have the technology here to add people live right away to the stage. So we want it to be an open forum where you get to participate in the conversation. People can come in and out, talk about game development and design subjects, and we're going to do this every week. And hey, we got 69 live people right now, so that's fantastic that so many people are interested in it. And I don't even know how many people have sort of jumped in and come out for parts of the conversation, but as we've sat here for now 47 minutes, the audience is sort of growing and growing, and we want to make it a weekly thing, and we want it to be your conversation, not just Paul and I kind of talking at you. Oscar's saying, shoot me the link. So we're going to demonstrate how this tech works for those who want to sit in, and I hope it emboldens you to want to participate.
this is cool software, man. I had not experienced this until tonight.
Yeah, it's not audio only, which is where I think we met, and that has its pros and cons. But I think one of the pros is actually the ability to roll videos in, add content, talk about, just kind of dynamically show the things that we're doing. So while I go off and get Oscar the link so he can join and we'll demo this, Martin had a comment about ideation, prototyping.
Yeah.
But he made an interesting comment. It helps when he already knew what he wanted to do. I'm not sure that's my experience. I feel like it gives me ideas too. Like I have conversations with ChatGPT where it's like, oh, I didn't think of that, and it surfaces things.
I think I'm more in Martin's boat. Like I have a lot of things I know I want to do, and I have only so much space in the day to get what I want done, and yeah, I think I'm more of a Martin. I mean, it's not that I haven't used it for brainstorming. I absolutely have. But I guess I just use it to, especially, I either hand the boring stuff over to it, or I help it make mature. I mean, if you're a game designer, like I think a lot of your job involves not just having an idea, but maturing it to a point where you can convince other people, right? You've got to not just have it, you've got to communicate it. And there is a lot of work, a lot of fleshing out, doing your homework, and a lot of, frankly, presentation, building documents or building PowerPoint decks that goes along with just having an idea. If you're just going to build something yourself, you just have the idea and then do it. But if you're on a team of, even a small team, but certainly if you're on a large team like I usually am, you do 10x the work for the selling of the idea than you do having the idea, right? Maybe even more. And so that's where the AI has really been an effector, is letting me get my is the selling of the sales side of things.
Do you think, just looking out across the industry, do you think game teams are still going to keep getting bigger, or are they getting smaller from here?
That is a profoundly interesting question, and I don't know the answer. Like of course, like you could see the dynamic pushing in both directions. Maybe it will push in both. Maybe yes is the answer to that. Maybe there will be. I mean, I did earlier say that, like, I think it's going to cut out the middle, right? And so maybe it's small, hyper quick, little teams, and then when an idea explodes, right, catches in the public, then you invest, then the investment pours in, and the team pours in, and you scale up. Maybe. Wow. I don't know.
Oscar is asking to send him link. Hey, Oscar, I sent you the link on a DM on LinkedIn, since that's where you posted that comment from. So it's in your DMs. Oh, Oscar's joining. What do you know? Hey, Oscar, welcome.
Hey, Oscar.
Microphone check. 1, 2.
You're on.
Record.
You're on. You're live. You're live.
John Paul,
Welcome,
it's been
Oscar.
a
Now you have to say something profound.
Let's see about AI in the production.
I mean, it doesn't have to be that type. Like, it could just be a profundity stands on its own. It doesn't have to be AI.
That's been where I've stuck for the past year now. I think that right now AI is accelerating all of the pre-production stuff that can get someone, whether it's an individual, an independent team, like the pitch phase of like getting something from like, okay, let's like commit money to it. The fact that with a very inexpensive NVIDIA card and maybe like a $20 subscription to ChatGPT, and maybe like, installing Flux, for example. And I found that asking ChatGPT to help me analyze artwork, synthesize artwork, generate artwork specifically for pitches and stuff.
Yeah, pitch decks will never be the same.
No, but it's not just pitch decks, because what you did with the interactive fiction, I'm thinking more about, say, a visual novel or RPG Maker, where if you have a codified system, whether it's a prefabrication on Unity or Unreal, but like if you can very easily take a large batch of like, very quickly produced artwork and chop it up, you should be able to get to an MVP using whether it's, just AI generated code or, more abstracted visual state machine stuff. Like all of these things are now where you are more talking to the machine and having it abstract your gobbledygook into semi-working or fully functional code that does have to be optimized. But the holodeck, you would tell it what you wanted to play, and it would, iterate it for you. And it was like an interactive conversation. That's what I think that bridge from interactive fiction to visual novel to AI taking the Creative Commons 5e D&D and frameworking out an experience which can be played out like Wasteland, like the original Wasteland. Like that's the kind of next stage I would see with like production that could arrive at Steam and not get, voted out of existence because people are still a little concerned about AI.
Well, that should be. I mean, it is a copyright infringement machine in a lot of ways, and they should be. Let's talk. Yeah, I like where you go. That's a good trigger for like something I've been wanting to say, which is you remember. I don't know. I'm kind of old. I remember when we got desktop publishing, right? And there was this brief period of time where fonts, right? And every document, we entered a brief phase of unreadable documents, right? As everyone discovered fonts, like just because you have an ability doesn't mean you're good at it, I guess is the ultimate lesson. And everybody would put different formats and everybody would put different fonts. And maybe for 5 years, the world looked like crap to anybody with any skill or understanding of visual layout, right? And we're going through that sag right now when it comes to art. And I got to say, it's a little demoralizing, especially demoralizing if you're an artist, because right now we're sitting here praising how it's good to make a good pitch deck. And that's absolutely true, John. Like I agree with you 100%. But I see so many decks filled with so many documents that are just filled with a 3-letter prompt image. And it just, it's embarrassing. Right, so the standard is because it's flexible now. What good people with talent can do has gone up, and the ease of which, but it's also easy to suck. And I think I would caution anybody from just learn to prompt, I guess is my advice, because sticking crappy art into your deck is not what we mean by suddenly now all the docks get good, right? You know, like I don't know, it's frustrating. I think it's telling on a lot of people too that you have a lot of people's decks tell me they have no taste. I guess it's the honest truth of the matter.
I find it's the same argument where like suddenly a bunch of college students are getting in trouble because their term papers are obviously ChatGPT. Anyone that can't take an initial, you know, like word vomit salad from ChatGPT and then like actually read it, interpret it, resynthesize it into actual functional, like useful stuff. If you're finding errors in like, you know, 12 fingers, and then you didn't even bother to have an artist look at the output from Stable Diffusion and fix the hand. And if that's the case, then how can you be trusted to run a production to completion, you know, honestly?
Yeah, and it's the hand thing is one thing, but it's the plasticity of the image. Oh, it's just, you know, again, you're just the quality of the art. You know, just the fact that you now have a pretty picture is not good enough. The fact that you've now got a soundtrack behind your deck is not good enough. Like, you have to have taste, and maybe that's the ultimate, you know, still undisputed domain of the human in this, is that somebody has to have taste. And
it feels like that is a really interesting way to think of what the role of a game designer is, though, as well, which is having great taste so that you can bring that to an audience. And particularly, taste comes from understanding particular audiences and what they really derive joy from, and then kind of almost curating things is the role of the tastemaker. So a lot of what AI does is it generates things, many of which includes ideas that aren't fantastic. So curating from the generative elements and determining what actually makes it in becomes something really, really important for the game developer, the coder, really anybody who touches these tools. Becomes increasingly like about the curation, which comes from taste. And I want to hear from both of you on that, but I also just want to say we're coming up at the end of the hour, and this is an hour-long program. 58 minutes flew by because it's such a fun conversation. Just for those of you who have joined, we're 72 people live right now. Probably a couple hundred have come in and out in the course of this. Just want to say the format that we're going with on this weekly is that you will be able to come into the stage and join the conversation. So it's not going to just be me and Paul or Oscar, if Oscar is going to be now hired as our producer. He's certainly the first to apply. Oscar, you're kind of a shoo-in for it at this point. But if it's us doing this, we want to make it an open stage where you can come in. Don't feel like you have to show up for an hour and think of things to talk about. Could be just you wanted to share something you had to say that's more than a comment and involve yourself in a conversation. But the audience here is game developers, it's industry. You're welcome to be a fly in the wall or even an active participant, even if you come from outside the industry and you're game curious, that's totally fine. But we want this to be for game developers and designers who are interested in trends that affect them, tools, technologies, ideas that affect the way you're building your game. Curation. Paul, Oscar, in our last minute or so here, let's go back with that. But Paul, curation.
I've always said the rise of AI is going to increase the value of authenticity. What is authenticity? Is about curation, right? So yes.
Oscar, I saw you nodding your head too. By the way, someone's got to come onto this, disagree with us passionately. So like,
bring the hate.
I hope someone's like, you guys are dead wrong. AI is the biggest torpedo in this industry that's ever happened. It's screwing it up. But Oscar, please go.
Who could possibly disagree with a correct opinion? Ultimately, at the end of the day, when you have your selection of 100,000 bits of code or image or whatever, it's the human at the end of that pipeline that has to determine whether or not this has value or this just adds noise to the signal. Curation.
There you go. Okay, well, that's it for our first hour. I just want to thank Paul for joining me for the first episode ever. We're going to be hosting this weekly. Oscar, thanks for jumping in about, well into the conversation, but adding your part. I had even more fun when you joined in, and it became that much more dynamic. So this is exactly what we're going with here. So awesome. I hope everybody will mark your calendar now and realize that 1 p.m. Eastern time, wherever that is for you in the world. We chose a time that we thought would get a pretty wide audience, from mornings to early evening across at least a big chunk of the world. Sorry for people in Asia. It's probably not that convenient, but we'd love you to come in too. Maybe we'll do one later for you someday, but this is where we're starting. We'd love to see you here every week. We've got 75 people live. We're ending today on a high point of the number of people who are watching live. Join in from the beginning next time and be part of the conversation. I promise it won't be about AI every week either. I know it's but like, we're going to talk about different things that affect game designers and developers and people in the industry making fun for the world.
Awesome.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Oscar.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
All right. See y'all next time.